Hello there and welcome to another live chapter reading for Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Today I shall be reading from Ye Gods, the Law is an Ass, Donovan Trait Book 2 by Seelie K. Chapter 1, The Groom. Donovan Trait pivoted and scowled. You have the audacity to claim you bear no liability for your actions. You skimped on the smoke alarms and sprinklers and failed to install the required numbers of fire extinguishers in the apartment building, formerly at 302 West Michigan Avenue, when a fire erupted in the middle of the night as a result of faulty wiring. My client's 8 entire families were left homeless, 14 people were hospitalised. How can you possibly deny fault? Objection, Your Honour. Counsel is badgering the witness. The defence attorney stood and planted his hands on his hips. Judge Hilary Lord's bright red lips curved up into a cruel smile. Actually, I've been admiring Counsellor Trait's restraint. Motion denied. She narrowed her eyes and gazed at the witness. Please answer the question, Mr. Livingston. The witness glared at Donovan. Because I didn't know that the smoke alarms and sprinklers were faulty. The man's voice grew strident. I was told everything was up to code, that the building passed all inspections. I have the reports. There is no indication anywhere that the building was not in compliance. I can't fix what I don't know. The middle-aged owner sat back in a witness chair and a self-satisfied smile crossed his face. Donovan studied the man. He looked every inch a pretentious, successful businessman. Artfully arranged hair, freshly shaved face, a tailored suit of fine quality, shoes bearing the shine of expensive leather. Even his Argyle socks screened money, and his hands, it was clear that this man was a stranger to manual labour. The buff of his most recent manicure was evidence of that. Livingston's only tell was the almost imperceptible twitch in his right eye. Not that Donovan needed the twitch to discern that the man was lying. Donovan Trait, one of Chicago's hottest lawyers, according to the Cheatown magazine, was a vampire. Vampires could read humans like a book. The slight rounding of the pupils, the increased heartbeat, the stiffening of the joints, all were indications of a lie. The best in the world could not escape the laser focus of a vampire. After all, vampires were closer to humans than any other species. The only real difference occurred in the genetic code. Through a twist of cruel fate for humans, the vampire's senses were greatly enhanced and enabled them to detect even the slightest physiological changes in humans. Of course, that was not the only genetic anomaly. Vampires also had fangs, those pesky lateral incisors that emerged in times of anger or overwhelming sexual arousal, and an unfortunate lust for human blood. Thankfully, centuries of evolution had provided the vampire nation with the gift of control. They no longer needed to drain the blood of humans to survive. Vampire scientists had developed a pill that quenched that thirst and replaced the nutrients a human had formerly provided. Vampires were still in the closet to humans, of course, primarily because humans had displayed an unfortunate lack of tolerance for anything that deviated from the norm. The list of horrifying acts perpetrated by humans onto anyone deemed different was long and growing. New controversies surrounded the cross-gendered were the most recent atrocity. But history had proven that what humans feared, they destroyed. The Inquisition, the Salem witch trials, and the internment and concentration camps during World War II were all evidence of the resilience of human hate. That meant the introduction of what was considered paranormal. Vampires, weirs, fairies and such could very well result in persecution and death. So while vampires existed in the human world, they were loath to expose their origins. The risk was just too great. Donovan stalked to the plaintiff's table and picked up a single sheet of paper. He pretended to read it, hiding his annoyance at the witness. Finally, he emitted a dramatic sigh. He turned and strode back to the witness stand. Mr. Livingston, have you ever seen this? He handed the paper to the witness and another to the judge. Livingston pulled out a pair of designer reading glasses and scanned the page. He paled and his lower lip trembled, but he responded, This appears to be a copy of a cheque written on the company account, but I don't know what it's for. I've never seen it before. Donovan cocked an eyebrow to convey his disbelief. Truly, Mr. Livingston? The cheque is for $100,000. How, as CEO of Livingston Construction, could you possibly be unaware of such a large amount? Surely you aren't in the habit of gifting random people. Livingston shook his head. A slight sheen of sweat emerged on his forehead. I have no earthly idea what this cheque is for. Donovan chuckled. Mr. Livingston, the cheque is written to Ronald Santuro. Do you know who that is? I do not. Would it surprise you to learn that he is a clerk in the Office of Cook County Buildings and Inspections Department? Livingston shifted uncomfortably in the witness chair. Of course it would. I just said I didn't know him. He peered down his nose at Donovan, his glasses now balanced on the very tip of that extremity. Donovan nodded at the paper Livingston held. Whose signature is on the cheque, sir? Livingston flushed. Well, mine, but this is one of those stamp things my secretary uses. She signs all of the company checks. That's her job. Donovan grinned, his best gotcha smile. Your secretary is Barbara Brewer, is it not? Yes, has been for about 15 years. 15 years? So you knew her before her marriage to Jonathan Brewer? Well, yes, I attended her wedding. Why does that matter? Because Ronald Santuro is her brother. Her maiden name was Santuro. Livingston shrugged. I did not remember that. He again peered down his nose at Donovan. Are you suggesting my secretary has been embezzling funds? His face screwed up in disdain. No, that can't be true. Donovan laughed. He turned to the jury and winked. Actually, your secretary is willing to testify that this cheque was prepared upon your instruction, signed upon your instruction, and delivered upon your instruction. She will also testify that she contacted her brother upon your instruction and arranged a meeting, at which you offered her brother $100,000 to expedite the paperwork for several building projects, including the very apartment building at issue in this lawsuit. The jury and those sitting in the gallery gasped. Donovan planted his feet directly in front of Livingston and gazed at him. He cocked his head. Tell me, Mr. Livingston, did you bribe Ronald Santuro to overlook your failure to comply with the building codes of Cook County? Donovan held up his hand. Before you answer, I should inform you that Mr. Santuro has been arrested for accepting bribes in his capacity as a public servant. Donovan checked his watch. Exactly 54 minutes ago. So let me ask again, Mr. Livingston. Did you pay Ronald Santuro $100,000 to overlook your failure to comply with the building codes during the construction of the apartment building formerly located at 2032 West Michigan Avenue? Livingston bowed his head, slunk into his chair, then mumbled something. Judge Lord frowned. I'm sorry, Mr. Livingston, I didn't get that. Nor did the jury. Please restate your answer a little more clearly this time. Livingston hesitated, then he slowly raised his head. His expression was one of fury. He glared at Donovan and spat. I refuse to answer on the grounds that it might incriminate me. Donovan grinned. Thank you, Mr. Livingston. Your Honour, I have no further need of this witness. I move that this notarized copy of a cheque made payable to Ron Santuro be entered into evidence as Plaintiff's Exhibit 23. He paused and smiled. The plaintiff rests. The judge nodded. We'll resume proceedings in 1 hour. She prepared to slam down her gavel on its sound block, but paused and pointed to the defence counsel. I hope defence counsel has the good sense to pursue a settlement before we return. Donovan entered the chambers of Judge Shirley Magnuson. Darling, I've missed you. He bent over and planted a kiss on her lush lips. Shirley laughed. She tossed her wavy blonde hair over her shoulder, and her deep blue eyes gazed at Donovan. Her mouth curled into a playful smile. It's only been 4 hours since you saw me last. And that was after a long night filled with sensual delights. I thought you'd stay away for at least a day so I could recuperate. Donovan smiled. Livingston's lawyer begged me to settle over lunch. I got him to cough up $1 million for each displaced person, plus medical fees and resettlement costs. Damn fool even threw in attorney's fees, which I will distribute to my clients. Case closed. So I had the rest of the day off. He knelt next to Shirley and stroked her leg. Running a finger under her skirt, he cooed, I thought we could play house. Shirley blushed and placed her hand over Donovan's, stopping its ascent. She sighed. Unfortunately, I have a full docket this afternoon. With Judge Heffernan on maternity leave, we are all picking up the slack, and I have no time. Donovan frowned. How unfortunate. Perhaps you should have taken the day off before your wedding. Shirley rolled her eyes. With your mother's help, everything is set. Flowers, food, the minister. The only problem will be the press and the paparazzi. I know the wedding of one of Chicago's most eligible bachelors and the winner of hottest lawyer title 5 years running is big news, but the media is already camped out at the church. Reverend Billings has repeatedly called to complain. He claims they have been very disruptive. Her hand swept his body. Those reporters can't resist you. Over 300 years old and you're still hot. Those piercing blue eyes, thick black hair, a body sculpted by the gods, and an appendage for pleasure that ensures I will never again be a human. Donovan grinned. You think I'm hot, almost wife? Why, that pleases me deeply. What about you? You give every bombshell in history a run for their money. He ran a finger along Shirley's upper thigh. Jean Harlow, Veronica Lake, Diana Dawes, you put their bodies to shame. All curls, all of the time. Thank you for watching this live chapter reading. I hope you enjoyed it and you'll go check out the book. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.